Welcome back, everybody. I now have FanSided.com's very own Josh Hill with us
Hello, everybody.
for A Song of Dan and Josh, the show where we go through every chapter of A Song of Ice and Fire and take it apart. What makes it tick, what makes it good, what makes it bad. And we are now on the very last chapter of A Game of Thrones, the first book in the series. Josh, what a long, strange journey it's been.
It was a long. I need to sign some yearbooks. Yeah, that's what you should do. You should sign books and send them out. Like, you didn't write them, but I've seen people do that before.
Gross.
Well, I've not personally received any of these gifts, but it's seems like we just started it just yesterday. But
we're pretty fast. Before we start, though, you just finished doing the Phantom 250, by the way.
We did, yes. Game of Thrones was on the list.
Number 11, I think.
3 years running, yeah. Every year I think it's moved down, which is...
Well, wait for the next year. When the final season, it will have no choice but to be way up top there.
Yeah.
Phantom 250 is a yearly ranking of the 250 top fandoms on the planet. Mm-hmm. And the Game of Thrones fandom, you guys being very delightful and wonderful, always scores high. I think it was 11 this year just because there's nothing new this year.
Well, that's a testament to the fandom, too.
It really is.
Is that there hasn't been any episodes on for, well over a year, right?
They still talk, though. They still tune in.
And
People
the fandom is still up there with...
speculating and everything.
Higher than Star Wars, higher than Harry Potter. It's up there with, like, some of the NFL teams.
Was Star Wars getting notched down because everybody was ragging on The Last Jedi so much?
It got notched down because of the reason people were hating on The Last Jedi, so... Which doesn't exist in Game of Thrones, it seems. So it seems like it's a loving fandom.
There are folk who don't like the story, but there are also folk who love it.
Yeah.
It's like any other fandom. It's got your true
Dark
believers and your
of
course any fandom has that. But it's a wonderful fandom overall. Obviously,
to be the 11th in the world is impressive.
Wait,
on an off year too.
Exactly. And Renee says hi.
Hi.
And let's start.
Let's do it.
So, Daenerys
the end is near.
10. Chapter 10. Final chapter of A Game of Thrones. Okay, so give me your gut impression of it. Your gut reaction.
I mean, this was like the big finale episode with your iconic Dany and fire moment. So,
yeah, it really was. It was pretty iconic.
Which I was actually looking forward to reading because it was, what it looks like visually, and it was a huge moment for the show and all this. But how do you... It's the reverse effect where it's like you read something like Harry Potter and you're like, well, how do you make this into a movie? It's the reverse. So I've seen it in the TV show. I'm like, well, how is he going to write this into a chapter? Make it as interesting.
I'll tell you how, using really elaborate language. I wrote down some stuff. So
big time.
This is the chapter where Dany's dragons are born. Mm-hmm. The end of Game of Thrones, the big climax. I loved it.
And Dany is born in a lot of ways.
Kabam, as the mother of dragons. But yeah, he uses... I really like the language he uses for the fire. Because that moment from the show that's iconic is her looking at her husband's body burning. Yep. And Jorah's like, don't do it. And she walks into the fire anyway, which is crazy. Because why would you do that? That's not a good idea. But
no.
Described from her perspective, it makes a weird kind of sense. Like George R.R. puts it like this. Huge orange gouts of flame unfurled their banners in that hellish wind, the logs hissing and crackling, glowing cinders rising on the smoke to float away in the dark like so many newborn fireflies. She was the blood of the dragon, and the fire was in her. I ain't done. She saw crimson fire lions and great yellow serpents and unicorns made of pale blue flame. She saw fish and foxes and monsters, wolves and bright birds and flowering trees, each more beautiful than the last. She saw a horse, a great gray stallion, lined in smoke, its flowing mane a nimbus of blue flame.
Nimbus of blue flame.
So he has a serious word crush on this fire.
Oh, he was saving this all for the last chapter, too. He was sitting on this for so long, and he just wrote the hell out of this chapter.
It's almost like... It's like he's described... It feels like she's a pyromaniac.
Yeah.
Like she's looking at this fire and saying, like, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life.
But she's seeing her destiny is what she's seeing.
Yes.
So that's why it works. It's like... She's so excited by her future, what is ahead of her potential. And we've seen her grow, or read her grow, I guess you could say, from when we first met her to like... Because I keep forgetting that the ages are different from the book to the show. Right. So she's even younger in the show, or in the book than she is in the show,
like
which makes it more impressive.
14.
Yeah, so here's this 13, 14-year-old girl who's gone through all of this crap that we've seen. And now she is realizing she's coming of age in a way through fire. Literally, fire is forging her future. And that's the way that he described it. It's a little flowery and it's a little, you chuckle at it a little bit, but he's like really describing it's intuitive. I mean,
like it's potent. It's supposed to be potent. It's supposed to be kind of mythic. And this whole chapter, what I liked about it is the whole thing felt eerie in a way that just you don't normally see.
Very mystical.
Yeah, mystical. Mm-hmm. Because what I liked about it was that the whole time, like, Daenerys clearly has a plan. Like, it starts with her gathering brush fire for this pyre she's making, and you know she's talking about how she's wondering, like, how many people did Aegon have when he conquered 7 kingdoms? It doesn't matter. I'll figure it out. Yeah. Like, last chapter she was trying desperately to save Khal Drogo and suffocated him, and she has a certainty here, like a kind of eerie, weird calm. Yeah. And it's a little creepy, and she doesn't let us into what she's doing. Like, she's building a pyre and burning her husband and walking on it, but she never like says, my plan is to walk into the fire and then survive it, impossibly, and then be reborn and have a bunch of dragons to help me.
Which is why it's so brilliant that it's told from her perspective, because she knows. Like, there's no need for explanation. Intuitive. She knows in her head what she's going to do. So you don't need, oh, yes, I'm going to walk through here, blah, blah, blah. This is my plan. It's, at the end of all the Bond movies, the Bond villain gives away the plan. There's no need for that. And the fact that it's coming from her perspective, which has been established throughout this book as we're going to get inside of their heads and figure out what they're thinking, to not know what she's thinking, yet know exactly what she's doing is great.
Like, you know what she's feeling, and you can feel her certainty, but you don't know her plan. She's being drawn by something. Like, I wrote it down, her internal thoughts. Like, Dany called the Dothraki around her. Fewer than 100 were left. How many had Aegon started with? She wondered. It did not matter. Like, she just she just knows she knows what she's doing is right, even though it's like objectively insane. And Jorah is like the voice of reason here. He's like, hey, don't do this, you stupid young idiot. He basically asked her to run away with her. Yeah. Like, let's go to Karth and Yee and Ashai, and we'll drink all this cool wine. And, well, I mean,
weirder because she's 13 or 14 or whatever. Not as weird in the show. But.
Right. I mean, he could still want to save her life. He hasn't shown sexual interest in her up to this point.
That's true, but really. Like, knowing their relationship, I entered into that with that kind of knowledge.
But yeah, so he's kind of... It's interesting to think about how to adapt this for the show, because it so much is about the tone. And I guess Emilia Clarke just kind of carried on her face, because we're not in her head in the show, so we just have to... She has to project utter confidence, whereas here he can write it out. What else happens in this one? This is also kind of the emergence of spooky, calm, kind of a brutal Dany. Yeah. Like, she has a moment in the show, where Emilia Clarke, like, stares into the middle distance and her voice goes really flat, and she just, like, orders her dragons to fry people alive. Yeah. Like, there's a bit in here where she ties Mirri Maz Duur, the witch woman, to the pyre. And the witch woman is like, hey, idiot, you don't know what you're doing. Untie me, and I will help you. And she just says, I am tired of the mage's brain. And then one of her dudes whips her. And he stops. And I saw Emilia Clarke there. I saw the exact facial expression she makes, like the dead eyes, like the staring away, and it just kind of worked.
Yeah. And that's, the evolution of Dany, her checking out of her humanity almost. Just like, this needs to be done, so we need to do it.
Exactly.
Forged from fire.
Speaking of, like, you're someone who watched the show first and then came to this. Like, are you picturing Emilia Clarke the entire time here? Okay.
Yeah. It's hard not to.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I was definitely picturing her, and that's why it keeps throwing me off with the age, because I'm picturing as the show, so not as a 13-year-old. But
and then finally, at the end of the chapter, how is this as an ending to the book? You know what? I didn't write it down, but I'm gonna read the end really fast.
There we go.
It's a good ending.
I do love the fireside chats with Dan. It's great.
As Daenerys Targaryen rose to her feet, her black dragon. Pale smoke venting from its mouth and nostrils. The other two pulled away from her breasts and added their voices to the call, translucent wings unfolding and stirring the air, and for the first time in hundreds of years, the night came alive with the music of dragons. And that's the final line. How is this as a final scene for a book?
We've been talking about the window dressing for the past couple of chapters here, but this does feel like a branch extending to the next book, and it's captures your interest. You're like, what the hell does
does.
that mean? Like, you go off. It's a really strong chapter to end on because it is very mystical. It's very visceral as far as like you're imagining this, both the fire and the action that's going on and the creation of this character. She's literally like a phoenix rising from the ashes. She's walking into the flames and forging her future. So it's interesting in that we started the book thinking that Ned was going to be the main character.
Sure.
This is going to be a conventional fantasy story and blah, blah, blah. And then it takes just a left turn after left turn after left turn. And it's perfect that it ends on this creation of a new main character. We have Dany. This is Dany's story now in a lot of ways. We still have Jon and we have all these other characters who we know will no longer be with us very soon.
Sure.
Which even more highlights the fact that this is Dany's story. This is where it becomes a game of Dany. This is her story. So I really like that that you ended on it. The unconventional nature of the book and ending on an unconventional chapter like this is fitting.
It is kind of cool. And it also kind of bookends the story too, because remember, like, for the great majority of this book, everything in between, it's Ned trying to navigate politics and failing. It's Sansa and Arya both
as
kind of
real world as you can get.
Very real world.
Yeah.
The first chapter is about ice zombies. The last chapter has dragons. Everything in between is just like things that could conceivably happen.
Yeah.
And these are both fantastical things. So it's good structurally. And again, it's a good example of a cliffhanger that does what a cliffhanger should do, like get you interested in what's happening. It's not like, there's a car coming right at you. Cut away, tune in next week. It's this big new move has happened. There's a game-changing element. Dragons are involved in the story now. It will go somewhere new now. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a very, very strong way to end a book and very well written.
And it translates to the show too, because this was the last episode of season 1, right?
I think the only time they've done that.
Yeah, so, and it was such a great cliffhanger for the end of the season, which is the same thing with the book where we get to fly right into the next one, but he writes it, publishes it. You got to wait for him to write the next book and come out with it. Same with the show. So that it worked so well as the end of this book, and it works so well as the end of the first season, I think, is really all you need to know.
Yeah, and the first season is the one that adapts it most closely, and now we're going to get more fun because it's going to kind of go further and further afield until we're basically somewhere completely new. Really quick difference. This thing's adapted pretty faithfully, like they didn't change a whole lot. They did cut Dany's all her hair burning off.
Oh, yeah.
They kept that, or they did not keep that. And they cut her furious lactation while she's standing there naked while the dragons drink from her breast.
For
Good
obvious
idea?
reasons.
Yeah, that would look...
I don't think that could get past the censors at HBO. I know it's
What
premium
censors at HBO?
I know it's premium cable, but they have a limit. Could you imagine how much more people would have gone after them for the gratuitous sex and violence if they had included
it's
that?
not gratuitous, it's just weird.
It is, but I don't know. At that point, it could be pretty gratuitous. It's just gross.
I think he's going for like
Nobody
symbolism,
likes warm milk is
mother,
gross.
but it's just no. There's no way that would not look silly.
Hard pass on that.
The hair probably a good call to not burn that off too.
Well, that's very much a vanity aesthetic. That's
save on wigs.
It's television, so
Yes.
yeah, that's why.
Anyway, that's a Game of Thrones. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. We of course will be reading A Clash of Kings in the new year. But I think next week we're going to do a Game of Thrones retrospective. Look over the whole book. What are our favorite chapters, favorite characters, favorite stories? Any parts that dragged? What parts stood out? And how does it all fit into the magic that is A Song of Ice and Fire?
Should do a clip show.
Sure. Get on that, Richard. Hope you don't want a weekend. So thanks a lot for watching. And we'll be back next week at 4 p.m. Central to talk more Game of Thrones, more Song of Ice and Fire, more Song of Dan and Josh. And looking forward to seeing you then. Adios.